Simone Leblanc-Smith here. I live in Memramcook.
Thérèse Mélanson. I live in Dieppe. On my mother's side, my family is from the Châtillon area. And the Châtillon area is known for mat hooking. And my mother lived in Memramcook. She married a fellow from La Hétrière. And that's where they lived for a long time. Anyway. My first experience with it was her. She saved all the clothes we went through, like for example, pants, jackets, especially wool ones, wool clothing. When we got home from school, we saw she had made a place for taking the clothes apart. So she could dye them if necessary. And that was our part, the kids' part. When we did that, we knew a mat was going to be made. And maybe even a hooking bee. The woman from La Hétrière would gather in someone's home and they would work on a mat all day. The families too.
Because she's the oldest in the family and I'm the youngest, I don't have all of those memories that she has. But I remember the last mat my mother hooked. In those days, we didn't have the good frames people have now. They were frames made out of planks of wood they put together with clamps to hold them together. The last mat my mother hooked that I can remember was when I was a teenager. I remember that the background was beige and that my aunt came to help her hook it. And I remember that there was a mat at the door to the front room, the living room. In every house in the valley, you could find a mat at the door into the living room. It was the last one they had hooked. And there was another one at the door at the front of the kitchen, and another one at the back door. Usually the one you'd see at the back door was the one that had been at the kitchen door the year before. And the one at the living room door went to the kitchen door. And the new one went to the living room door. But that's the one I remember the best. It's the only memory I have of seeing my mother hook mats, the mat there. And I remember, I think it had flowers on it. She really liked flowers, and the background was beige. Anyway, I did a flower pot with tulips in it, and I finished it. That's one of the finished ones. It's not big, but it's done.
You with your 187 hooks. You should have more done than one little mat.
Yes, I have no shortage of hooks. I have 187 in my collection. Maybe more, but they're all over the place. But I found two that they're my favorites. This one is my favorite of all, but I have some interesting ones. I have two that are signed. Look at that one. I bought it. You see, it's not ordinary for a hook. This one is made from a bullet. This one I bought. It doesn't look like the others, and this one, I love it, and I just love it. Probably the wife asked her husband, go and make me a hook in the shed. And that's what he came back with. That's the one I love the most.
This one's a nail.
Yes, really. Probably it's a nail, and I really like those ones. It's like when I hold it in my hand, I can feel how much work has been done with it.
He made it with a little block of wood and a nail. My grandpa Doucette made them for his wife and daughters. They were all mat hookers, all of them. I think that the majority knew how to hook mats. And they did it for money. Because they sold their mats every summer to the tourists who came by our place. I say came by because the main road to go to Halifax or Cape Breton went by our house. So there were lots of tourists passing by in the summer. There was a woman. I don't think she hooked. She spread out mats made by the woman in La Hétrière in her front yard. She hung them up and put up a big for sale sign on the road. And the tourists would stop and buy the women's mats. Her name was Marie Légère. We called her Marie Achal.
There was a lady in Memramcook who made a lot of them. Her name was Ida Boudreau. She was a widow. Her husband died, and she started to hook mats then. And she was well known in the region. There was a mat from the Garrett Company, the Blue Nose, that was really popular, and she made a lot of Blue Nose mats. And she made mats to order for people. She made mats for weddings with the date of the wedding, the bride, and the groom's name on it. She really made more than, well, anyone else I had ever heard of in Memramcook. She was really the mat hooker in Memramcook. Besides her, no, I don't remember there being a lot of them because I'm not young anymore, you know. I don't remember many mat hookers besides Madame Boudreau.
But Madame Boudreau had a show of her mats in Halifax. There were the Blue Noses she was known for all across the Maritimes. And she did beautiful work. Sometimes Mom had a lot of trouble selling her mats because her hooking looked like Shitscan hooking. And it was so even, people thought it had been done on a machine. They didn't think it could be done that well by hand. When Mr. McDermott came into our class, there were 4 of us from Memramcook. And he said, "I remember coming by your house and buying mats hooked by women from the village." So he was just passing by on holidays.
He must have bought them from Marie Achal.
Oh, yes, he bought them from Marie Achal. They made roses. There were lots of flowers, and the flowers were... They called it a raquet, the loops, and then when they got the flowers, the roses, they rounded the edges. It was really beautiful, different.
How about you? Do you have any memories of your grandmother? Who did that?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yes, she made tapis raquet. I don't think my mother made any.
No. Oh, yes. First of all, they were to sell. They didn't keep them for the house. And they got rid of all the old pieces of clothing that way. They saved them and used them for mats. There were woolen long johns they bought at Eaton's. But they dyed them. They made pretty flowers.
Stanfield's?
Oh, yes.
I find that today they make nice mats because they make them with wool, but for me, I still like the mats made from rags the best. Rag mats are my favorite, but even with that, you can use a machine to cut them. And that still makes nice mats that don't really look like the ones our ancestors made, but they're close. But they do nice work with wool, and I think that there still is. There's still a lot of people who hook. It's not really something that's disappeared. It's an art that will live on. Maybe it's not a necessity anymore because they had to have them for the house and to sell them to get a bit of money, but today they do it because they like doing it.
Yes, it's an art that shouldn't disappear. And I have the feeling it won't disappear. Because it's a way of expressing yourself. And that's huge. It requires a lot of imagination. So all the arts have value.
Garrett, who sold patterns, he started in the 1920s, selling them in Eaton's catalog. It was more practically all the families in Memram Cook had an Eaton's catalog in their house. So it was easy for me to order one, and it wasn't expensive because it cost around 25 cents, 75 cents, or maybe $1. But I bought one to make and sell. It was a beaver. And it wasn't a Garrett's Blue Nose mat. It was another company. I brought them my collection of hooks. I have a lot of them, like I said, and I brought them 187, but I have them all over my house. Anyway, it's pretty close to 187. I started with one, and I just kept going, and I bought some clamps. It was like we didn't have any nice frames like they have now. They were planks of wood, and they put them together like that. They were held together with these clamps here and kept them good and tight. Then under the planks, there was some material that was attached with nails. And then they attached the burlap on that. It was big, pretty big. I would get bags. At first, we were living on a farm, and my father bought wheat or oats in burlap sacks. And once the bag was empty, my mother kept it and washed it, and it was good for 2 mats. Because you had to. They would cut it in half, and that's pretty much the size of an Acadian mat. In Acadian homes, because they used mats like that, we didn't have to buy any burlap, and then we saved old clothes. And those clamps, these ones are really old. They were made by a blacksmith. I bought them, I can't remember where, but they date back to the 1800s. But I remember that my mother had a pair of them. We had maybe 4, and we put them all together, and they had a hook up there in the attic. And when she needed to make a mat, she would go up and get her hooks.
They inherited them, passed them down from generation to generation. That's why you can still find old ones. They were passed from one family to another, yes.
I remember that my mother never bought anything.
No.
Everything was in the house. She had her frames, she had her clamps, she had her hook. Everything was there.